All right, good morning, everyone. It's Ron Wilkerson. This morning, we're going to take a look at some of the new features that were just released from Luminar AI. If you guys are not familiar with Luminar AI, there will be a link in the description where you guys can go over to their website and take a look at it. But the advantage to Luminar AI for new photographers is that it is a standalone program. So even if you don't have Photoshop, you can still run Luminar AI as a standalone and you'll get all of these same features. So let's just open it here real quick and you can see what that looks like. Let's give it a second. I got a lot of things running in the background. So the standalone gives you all the same features, you know, the templates, the catalogs, the advanced editing panel, as well as all of your export features. But we'll discuss all of those within Photoshop. But I'm just showing you here that you can run this application independent of having Photoshop. So let's go ahead and close that and go back to Photoshop. So one of the new features that they've added is this Bokeh AI for humans. So up to this date, this is the first version of this new feature. So it only works with humans according to their description, but I found ways that you can actually utilize it for with objects or other things. But for today, we're just going to focus on how it works with humans. And of course, the moment I decide to go live, the lawn service shows up. Yeah, that's my luck. My life be like. Okay, so anyway, let's move on, guys. So if you go over to your plugins and you would click on your Luminar AI, and it should take your image obviously into Luminar AI. Now this image I haven't done any adjustments to, I haven't done any corrections or anything. We're just going to rely pretty much on what Luminar can give us for this specific image, right? So like before, you know, all your other templates are here, what is suggested for you. There are other you know, panels that are available to you for doing certain things for the image. So let's say, for instance, you know, we wanted to go into one of these and we just clicked on this one that's here called Flawless. So it lightens up the background and it, you know, puts a little bit more light on the face of the model. And we say, okay, we like that, but there's a couple more things we want to do here. So we would just click on Edit. And like I mentioned before on yesterday, anything that panel that you clicked on is using, you'll find it here in the Edit panel. So obviously it has adjusted the lighting. You can see where it has adjusted the lighting here, smart contrast. It has adjusted the denoise. It has adjusted, I wish it could adjust that lawnmower outside. It has adjusted the face, so it's added some light to the face, so a little bit of face light. And you can go in and, you know, raise that or reduce that. It's just up to you. You can slim the face. I can see that that was also applied to this image. When you go to skin, it has corrected the skin somewhat, softened the skin. And you can turn these on and off to see, you know, what the effect actually looks like. So, and what else did it do? It adjusted the body. So it made her look a little bit slimmer, you know, around the midsection here and brought a few things down. So if we turn that off and then back on, you see how it just kind of pushes in from either side to slim her down just a little bit. But the Bokeh AI is what we're going to focus on today. So what this new feature allows you to do is that, say for instance, you know, you don't have a 1.4 lens or 1.8 yet, and you know you're still shooting with you know 5.7 or something like that. You know, one of the almost like a kit lens. You can still, in many ways, in natural photography, you know what I mean by natural photography is in the camera you can still get some of these effects, but you won't get the effect of having a 2.8 lens, or the bokeh effect of having, you know, like one of my favorite lenses, well, two of my favorite lenses is the 85mm 1.4 as well as the 35mm 1.4. And if you're shooting wide open, meaning if you're shooting at 1.4, you're usually going to get a really soft, creamy background, behind the model. So the model will be in really good, really sharp, but everything else beyond the individual or the object will be out of focus. So one of the things that you really have to concentrate on when you're using those type of lenses is that you're getting really sharp eye focus. Because the slightest movement, in either direction, you'll wind up with an out of focus face. The features won't be in focus. So the most important thing is getting those features in focus. So let's say, for instance, you don't have, one of these high-end lenses. So what you can do here is you can use this panel, and let's just raise the amount all the way to 100 and see what we get. And it's probably going to be, a ridiculous amount of blur. And you can even see it, if you go to click on here, focus, you can see what it selected. So it did a really good job of masking her body, yet it did not capture any of the stuff that's in the background. Give me a second, guys. So the objective, if you were doing this in Photoshop, you would do something similar to this to get the same effect. But most of the time, when we look at something like this, what we have to consider is that this software is very new. So don't just click on it and go, okay, everything is great, I'll just move on from there. Because a lot of times what we find is that there are some areas that it may not have captured properly. So you'll then have to go in and, check those areas yourself to make sure that the mask is completely covering the areas that you want it to cover. And usually you just zoom in on your image and you have focus, defocus, and restore. I never really use the restore, but the focus, is going to give you control over the mask. So if you see an area that may be out of focus or that should be in focus, you could always go in and draw on your mask to either select that area or deselect it. Now, if you go down here to background, there are some other features down here. You have a depth correction, which is really good, and then you also have an edge correction. So if you zoomed in on your image and you see something is not exactly what you want, you could always adjust the depth and it will correct it somewhat. So what you're looking for is to make sure that your image doesn't look like it was something that was cut out in Photoshop and then pasted somewhere else, because what it'll start to do is it'll mask around the hard areas or the hard lines of your image, and you'll start to get that cut out look. So you can just adjust this back and forth until you get to a point where you're happy with it. So we're just going to put that back to where it is. And I mean, like I said, this is way too much. You would never want it to be that high. You just want it to have somewhat of a, blurrier background for your image. So let's go back and then look at another image. Now, when there are foreground colors or foreground objects, you have to take that also into consideration as to what's going to be in focus and what's not going to be in focus. So let's take a look at this image here. So here's a young lady, in a bikini, and there's a boat directly behind her. So what you would really want to be out of focus is all the things that are behind her, not necessarily that's on the same plane as she is, right? So let's go back over to Luminar and see exactly what it does. Now, hopefully it will just select exactly what it is we're, wanting to select, and you don't have to do very much. So let's just go over to Edit, and then we can go here to our portrait, and let's just bring up the amount, and then we can take our mask, and we can see, you see here, it captured some of the boat. So that means some of the boat's going to be out of focus. So if you don't want that, you can just go here and you can just start painting that out. And you can zoom in, obviously, and you'll start to see, make your brush smaller, and you can start to, just really paint that area out just to give it a better effect, if that's what you're going for. So let's say that's what we want. Let's zoom back out. And like I said, you can raise the amount. You don't want to do it to a point where it looks unrealistic, like, no lens would be able to capture that, that type of bokeh, unless you're using like a 1.0 lens or something like that, which, is a very expensive, very rare lens, but you kind of get the effect. So if we were to, say, okay, that's great, I still think that's too much, so I'm gonna bring that down some. And we apply that. And usually it takes a few seconds, for it to apply because it's doing a lot of work in the background. The current version of Luminar is compatible and it works really well with Photoshop. It works really well with the M1 Max. So if I zoom in close here, what I'm looking for is anything that could be a problem. So you see around her arm, either I just didn't catch it all, but you could see that there's something that's not completely perfect. Now, there's two ways you could address this. You could either just go back and redo it, or you could just clone in this area and blend this a little bit better, so that you don't see that. But to me that would stand out a lot. But remember, this is just the first version of this software, so it's relatively new, and I'm sure there's going to be updates and improvements going forward to get a much better result. So let's look at another image. Let me see what I have here. I grabbed a few images that I thought would be, perfect. So here's one, and it captures, the thing that I was concerned about was if there's a group portrait, like at a wedding or a corporate event, and you're using something like this where you want to make something blurry in the background, would it automatically select all of the people? So what I've found so far, and I'll show you guys here, it's really good at finding faces. So the AI, for what it's worth, for the amount of advancements that we've seen in 2021, is just outstanding. So we look at this and we start to blur out that background, and we go to our focus brush. We should be able to see exactly where it's selected, and you can see here it's selected all the people. Now, if you zoom in really close, you will notice, that, again, you have some issues with, some fringing, for around the hair and things like that. So again, like I said before, you can always go in and you can adjust the depth, contrast, and adjust how much of the mask is applying to what part of it. And you can also paint it out if you need it to, right? So that's good that, we see it. It's definitely capturing all of the people. So let's cancel this one since we don't want that. Yes, I want to cancel. So all of these same tools would be available to you if you were, like I said, running just, exclusively the standalone version of this
software.
And then there's other improvements that they've made other than this new feature, which is the bokeh. One of the cool new things that they've done is they've improved their sky replacement. So if we go and we look at this image really quick, and we're just going to open it also in Luminar. We're going to do just a couple of really quick things. So we'll say, okay, someone captured this. It looks great. Everything is nice. So I'm just going to throw something really fast on here. I'm just going to throw on this little effect. It added a little bit more contrast. We say, okay, that's cool. I like that. So now we go over to our bokeh, and then we add a little bit to blur out the background. And we start to see, we can look at our mask to make sure that it's just getting her. Okay, that's good. Then what we could do is we could go up here to sky, and we could select the sky and then replace that sky. It takes a few seconds for it to render. And boom. And if you notice, the sky is also blurred out. So if you change it to a different sky, something, that's unrealistic, but something that's more realistic to the environment, that's way over the top, but you get the idea. So easily enough, in just a few clicks, you were able to take this image from, where you started, to something that most people would be impressed by. Now, like I said before, you know, these plugins, these programs, you know, you have to take them with a grain of salt. There's going to be some little learning curve, but to speed up your workflow, to give yourself the look that you're trying to achieve. So, you know, you say, okay, well, that looks great. Let's go back, forward, back. You know, that's a tremendous difference. So, I mean, all I'm saying here, guys, is for the investment in, you know, a program like this, it's worth the investment. If you're starting off as a new photographer and you're looking for ways of creating content that will speed up your workflow, and these tools can definitely speed up your workflow. So that's going to be the most important thing. So anyway, guys, I'm going to bring this live to an end because obviously the lawn people are out there and they're not going to go away anytime soon. But hopefully this overview and this little walkthrough of some of these new features and Luminar, you know, will be helpful to someone. And if that's the case, then, you know, I've done my job. Okay, guys, I look forward to seeing you on Instagram tomorrow at 10 a.m. So make sure to follow me there. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Until then, take care.